Hi folks, welcome back to the shop in the middle of the week. We don't, like I say, we said to you before, we don't normally do this, but anyway, I thought you'd bring another tidbit, something to whet your appetite a little bit, and also a little process that is probably a bit more difficult during our live show. So I thought I'll just make you a little jig for one of the processes that we're going to do on Sunday. Now, the jig that I'm going to make looks a bit like this. This is a shorter one, and what we have, I've got a little toggle clamp, and I've just cut out a piece of MDF with the cove in it, right, with a little nice little right angle stop in it. So I'll show you what that's all about in a sec. But normally with most of my projects, I put a little foot on. But with this one that we're working with, what I've decided to do is give it a little bit more character by creating that curve. Now, how do I get that curve right? I want it exactly the same on both sides of the box, and I want it exactly the same on both ends of the box. Again, the reason for this, first of all, is a bit of decoration, create a shadow line, and secondly, it's to give you 4 points of contact with the box on the bench, the floor, wherever you're going to keep it. So what we have to do is we have to make some sort of jig, because we can't use the same process that we do on our normal boxes. So I'll put that aside and I'll get you one of the normal boxes. This just happens to be a little one. If I go to my mobile camera, you can see I've got that nice little foot on the bottom. Now, the router bit that I use to do that looks like that. It's a 10mm spiral bit, and that's what I use to do that. And as you can see, the router bit is only half the depth of the foot. So that's not going to work. That's not going to work with a half curve in there. So we need to devise a different way of doing it. And as you're probably aware from some of my last videos, I make lots of little jigs to do various things around boxes and so forth. And this is no different. So the first thing we're going to need here, just put some of these things back. The first thing we're going to need is a platform. Okay, so the platform here, what I have is a piece of MDF. It's only a 12mm piece. It doesn't need to be very heavy because it is going to be a jig and we're going to clamp things to it. So on my box, and this is the plinth that I want to create the curve in, I want to create a curve that goes from here to here. Okay, so it's going to be 20mm up from the bottom, and I think it's 40mm, maybe 50mm, 55mm in from the edge. So we've got to keep that in mind. So we need a piece of material that's at least the length of the style, or a little bit longer. So I've got a piece of MDF here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece off, and then we're going to shape the jig itself. So generally around about 200mm, which gives you plenty of stability on the bench. And this is what we do with it. So I'll just shift things for you. I'll move the camera around. So onto my bandsaw. So I'm just going to trim off a piece off the bandsaw up here. So now I have my piece of material. I need to get a length on that, so I can trim a piece off that off as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut it at 260mm, which is plenty. Sorry, we might cut this one at might actually leave it at that length, I think. So it's quite long enough. What I want to do is I want to square up the end so that I'm square to this face. So I'll go over to the drop saw and I'll trim that up. I'll just change the camera over so you can see what I'm doing. So bear with me there. So we're up onto the saw. So now I'm going to just trim off the edge. Make sure they're square on both ends. I'll keep the length the same. Square up the other side. Here's on again. Okay, so back to my bench. And now I'm squared up on both sides. So now what I need to do is I need to be able to cut a curve in here, because what I want to do, I'll just pull this apart for you. So it was a fairly tight fit on that plinth, which is what we want, nice snug fit. So our piece of timber is going to fit on like so. I'll just get that other camera and bring it over so that you can see what I'm doing. So what we have here, once it comes back into focus, we have our piece of timber, which is this long. I'm going to put a stop on the end, which will fit like so, and then I'm going to put a stop on the back. Now what I wanted is I want it flush with the top front of the piece of timber. So this needs to be nice and square. Now before I can actually screw that into place, what I need to do is I need to mark my curve and work out how my curve happens. Now the easiest way to do that, I could get a compass, a big compass, and I could set it up on the table here, and I could draw some circles and so forth, and try and get myself this lovely arc that goes across here, but that's a little bit hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I get my curves, and they work quite well. So the first thing I'll do, let's go to here, is cramp my timber down on the bench with two little pieces of stop. Now I've got the markings already on there, so let's cramp this in place like so. Another one on this side. That's cramped to the bench. Now the measurement that I want to come up here is 20 millimetres. So if I measure up 20 millimetres, scribe myself a line along. It's only an indicator line. Shift this out of the way. Now you need to make sure that your clamps are right out of the way of this. I've got them lined up with the edge of the mark there and here. And just get your ruler and sit it on the end of the piece of timber like so. And just finger in the centre or close to the centre, and just push the ruler out to your mark, and there I have my arc. Okay, so that's the shape that I'm going to get. So what I need to do now is transfer that onto my piece of timber here. So if we take this off here, bring my piece of timber in. Line that up nicely. And get yourself a square. And just square the edge of that line down onto the base plate. So one there. There. Measure our 20 millimetres up. So on this one here, what we can do is just mark the 20 mil, like so. The ruler on here, and just scribe a line through the middle somewhere. Okay, so it's not important where that is as long as it's in the middle. And this is where my marks are. So that's my first mark, that's my second mark. Here's my pieces of timber. So I'm working off the corner of each of these pieces of block. So, the same technique, put the ruler on like that. If I'll bring this camera around a little bit more so that you can see. So all I'm doing is that, finger in the middle, push it out to the line. And there's my arc. Okay, so that gives me a pretty good arc just by doing that. So it matches up to what's happening on the piece of timber. Now I need to cut that piece out and then shape it. When you're doing these, when you're shaping these things, it's always a good idea to make sure that you get you do the job really, really accurately. So I'm going to cut this, so I'll just turn the camera around again. And cut as close as you can to the line. Let's have a look. There you go. So we're going to cut as close as I can to the line. Now the next step is to get this nice and smooth. Okay, so because I've cut really close to the line and I'm using soft material, I can just sand that and I can get a very accurate line. So I'll go over to the to my vise and I'll show you how that works. So it's just a matter of set up in the vise like so. And I have a piece of 100 grit sandpaper, so it doesn't have to be light sandpaper. And you'll notice on my sanding block, the edges of the sanding block are actually rounded. So that will keep the curve occurring there. And it's just a matter of sanding down to the line. The more times you do this, the more practice you get at it, and you'll eventually get quite a number of these. If you're making lots of boxes, you probably get quite a lot of different jigs. And you can use them over and over and over again. And that's the idea of getting the jig, is to make sure that, first of all, it's accurate. Secondly, I'm pretty good there. Like so. Now, how to check that? Just to check it, what we need to do is just sit the ruler on top like that and press it down and just see what your arc is doing. Just got to take a little bit off the top of here. Got a nice flat surface there. It's come up quite nice. Hold that down, just press it down, and you can see it touches all the way along there, which is really good. That's what we want to do. Just take a little bit off the edge, and there's our arc. Okay, back to our bench. So now, what I need to do is I need to put the rest of the bits on the jig. Now I've just made two flat pieces. These bits here, all I've done with them is I've got them nice and square, and I've drilled a hole. It doesn't matter where the hole is, and I've countersunk the holes so that the screw doesn't sit up and scratch you when you're working with it. What we want to do is we want to set this on here exactly where it's going to be. And you can see I've gone from point to point. And I stop at the end. I want that perfectly square to this face here. Okay, so that has to be perfectly square to that face. But once you have it square, I'll just check it. And that's spot on. I clamp it in place. Okay, and then we just couple of screws and get the end of it done. So I've got the screws over here. So 2 screws. There's 1. My 2 screws. Just want to check that to make sure I have got it square. Okay, perfect. Now this piece goes on top of here. So we flush with both front and back. Again, put that on there. Just make sure we're hard up against. Like so. Again, clamp it in nice and tight. And what I want to do here is I'm just going to move it over, clamp it to the end of the bench. I don't want that to move while we putting the screws into it. Okay, just going to check it has moved, so I need to fix that. So we've got to go, and 3 or 4 screws into that. And so there I have my stop. All I need to do now is cut out this piece, and then we'll route the top. Now, how do I hold it in place? Carbotech have these U-Butte little toggle clamps. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fit the toggle clamp onto here. So the easiest way to do that, a couple of holes. I put it up this end here because I don't want it to interfere with what happens with the router bit when we start straightening things. We'll drill that. So it's just a matter of drilling those. Now my drill bit has a countersinking bit as well. Okay, so I'm just going to use that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my board over, and through my hole, just going to countersink. Doesn't need to be very far, just enough. Okay, so we countersunk those. Just check that. I've got 4 screws here. Just check to see that they pop below the surface. You need to make sure that they're below the surface because they'll scratch on the bench otherwise. Now we fit the toggle. Okay, where's my toggle clamp? Toggle clamp goes on there. Screws up through the bottom. The nuts for them. Now I don't go all out and make sure that everything is there for keeps, because at some stage down the track I might want to use the toggle clamp for something else. So I don't put it in there so that it's going to stay there. It'll stay there as long as I need it, and then I can take it off and put it on a different job. Or make a different clamp, or make a different jig. There's a multitude of things you can use these little toggle clamps for. Very nice, very easy to use, very easy to fit. So what we're going to do is I'm just making the clamp today. I'm not going to cut the piece of timber. I'm just going to show you how the clamp is made, and then we will, on Sunday, finish the job. So, just my screwdriver on there. Like so. And now I have, let's get some of these bits out of the way and I'll show you. So now I have piece of timber set like so, clamped in place. It's not going to focus, there it is. It's clamped in place, and I'm going to cut out that section there. So on Sunday, when we finish when we get this thing started, I'm going to cut that off with the bandsaw, and then we will route it out and make it fit. Okay. So that's a little bit tidbit for today, and we'll start using this gear next Sunday. Just make sure that if you're keeping up with us, try and get yourself a clamp made, and we will endeavour to use it on Sunday. So that's your tidbit, and I will see you all on Sunday.